We as a people can build walls to protect from outside enemies and undesirables, yet our precarious defenses often fail. It has been this way for generations, both in real-life histories and for the inhabitants of Vera. These races were not immune to war, famine, or even near extinction. They had the same flaws, if not more, as our own society. The only difference between them and us was magic. Magic made up for their shortcomings, and when it was ripped away, they had to adapt and overcome. This rebirth was long and probably at times difficult. This new start was Sanctus. By definition, the word Sanctus means holy. Considering the context of the story of Ashes, it is safe to call Sanctus the Holy Land. Funny is that holy can relate to being pure or free of something. Sanctus is void of magic, so the name is befitting indeed. A quick shout out to Sim, who I joined recently on one of his podcasts, the Ashes Pathfinders. I really enjoyed that show. It was very inspiring, and I love lore, so delving into that discussion was awesome, and I love hearing other people's interpretations of lore and their theories. So with that said, let's jump in. Now, for those of you who may be new to Ashes, or just to give a refresh for those who have maybe forgotten, here's a quick and compressed version of the lore timeline. So the Harbingers, to begin with, were a group of unexplained falling lights in the skies above Vera. They fell one day, bringing mass of monsters known as the Ancients, and corruption fell upon the lands of Vera. Shortly thereafter, the people petitioned their gods for help. The gods answered and summoned up gateways. These gateways led the people of Vera to a land called Sanctus. This place was void of magic. This was known as the Exodus. During the time of the MMO, thousands of years have passed and the gateways have reanimated, and the link between Sanctus and Vera has once again been reopened. Now that you have caught up on somewhat of the lore, for the purpose of this video, at least, let's continue on. So this next bit might be a theory or could be lore, like official lore. It kind of ties into the Tolnar. So there were two gods, the goddess of fate, Norlan, who foresaw the calamity and petitioned the goddess of creation to create the underrealm for the people who would be left behind. Now, my thinking is, if they created the underrealm during this time, wouldn't it be safe to say that they also created Sanctus during this time? It would make sense that they would kill two birds with one stone. So that's something to think about before we dive into a little bit more of Sanctus. Alright, so the people rush through the gateways, right? Only to find themselves magicless, sweaty, no place to call home. They're faced with an unfamiliar land and who knows whatever dangers are out there. Some of the issues that immediately they would face would be a very low tech availability, if they even had anything on their person. No magic to assist them with either healing the wounded that came through, or doing just tasks that required magic, or just simple tasks that they never actually learned how to do practically. Assuming the gateways didn't discriminate on which race could enter, the huddle of mixed races that came through would also be in danger, seeming as how different races didn't get along with other races, and different cultures had different views, and this could possibly be a time to settle scores. Now, remember, there are all ages, all walks of life pouring through these gateways. Yes, they had no magic, but I'm sure among the refugees there were people who were like bakers, brewers, alchemists, teachers, politicians, weaponsmiths, who at some point in their training had to learn how to do these things by hand or by practical means. So these people already had or I would hope they would have, some knowledge that did not involve magic. We also know that the order of people known as the Verdant Keepers, who kept the lands of Vera beautiful and lush with food and farms, maybe they had some type of, non-magic ways to grow food and crops and could help cultivate Sanctus. The real advantage, though, would be the untapped amount of resources that Sanctus provides for these people. You're coming from Vera, who had several major empires and just vast amounts of people eating up resources, and you are now in a world that has unlimited potential, and there are no laws or any borders preventing anyone from taking and making these resources theirs. So that's a plus, I guess. Alright, so there are many theories floating around on the actual location of Sanctus. Some of them that I have read or I have heard throughout the forums and just passing. Either it's a moon of Vera, it's a different planet, or it's in a different realm or reality. You might be asking yourself, well, which is it? The answer is all of them, maybe? There's very little lore about Sanctus, so your theories, they're just as good as mine. We do know that the different cultures of Vera had a curiosity for the stars. We see it in concept arts, and we see it in the subrace of Orc known as the Vec. So there could be some possibility that these people found a different planet somewhere and maybe petitioned their own god to say, hey, can you send us here? There's pocket realities. APOC lore talks about people entering different dimensions and realms where things are kind of like upside down and distorted. So that's not out of the realm of possibility. Also, we know that different gods control their own realms, and perhaps Sanctus could be just an offshoot of one of those realms. But, again, there's not much lore about Sanctus itself to go off of, so take everything with a grain of salt and tell me your theories, because I can only come up with so much. I would love to hear what your theories are about the location of Sanctus. So this is going to get a little bit weird. During the Battle Royale, we see what a gateway looks like. In the center, there's a gem that turns and radiates. My theory involves gods and stolen magic. So for this theory to work, we have to view the gods of Vera as needing prayers and recognition to retain their strength and power. Okay? With that said, what if the gods knew they would be weakened after they created the gateways, and sending their worshippers away would further do so? It would take some time for them to regain their strength, and we don't know how many people actually stayed on Vera and how many people were actually worshipping the gods, depending on the god. So as the people stepped through the gateway, their magic was siphoned from them into this gem residing in the middle of this portal. Okay, are you still with me? Now, we know that during the time of APOC, there was a united coalition called the Light Pack, who were searching for a way to reanimate these gateways. Obviously, it took them several generations, but they did it. They managed to actually do it. We don't know how they did it or how they had this knowledge, but they did it. They used whatever means to reactivate these gateways. Now, since those gems still had the siphon magic, it worked. Now the gems would act like a battery, so they just needed a jump start, seeing as how these gateways fell dormant and they really didn't have anything to, they had no purpose to be open. Far-fetched, yes, but it's not out of the realm of possibility until more lore is handed to us. And until that lore is handed to us and my theories or other people's theories can be debunked, I'm gonna keep rolling along with this. Whatever hardships the old Varens faced in Sanctus during the time of the MMO. They somehow managed to overcome whatever diversity, whatever racial indifference that they had between them. So we soon will find out if they were prosperous in Sanctus, how well educated they were in Sanctus, if they had any preconceived notions about Vera, since most of the stories that the people coming from Sanctus during the time of the MMO would see Sanctus as legend, myth. These were all sort of like fairy tales to them, kind of like Atlantis is to us. Did it really exist? Is this just, you know, some crazy old person telling me a made-up story? And just how self-sufficient that the people of Sanctus became since they had no magic, and bringing that knowledge from Sanctus and applying it to Vera, where now possibly their world could be, their way of life could become easier, and they could actually make bigger and better things. But we all know how that goes when you give people magic in most stories. It can go sideways really fast. So I'm very curious to see what we as the player encounter in Vera coming back to this world of magic. Now, closing, I want to say I don't consider myself a lore master. I'm more of a lore keeper, a whisperer of lore, if you would like. Please remember that lore is interpreted many different ways because we all have varying degrees of perception and thinking. This is good, however, and I encourage more of you to be curious about lore, because stories, lore, folktales, whatever you call it, they shape a society and how we view the world. We can add to it, we can omit sections of it, but the truth always lies somewhere in between. So I encourage you to share what your favorite type of lore of Ashes is in the comments. Let me know what you thought about this video and your theories are, and thank you again for watching. Have a good day.